Life is a journey full of challenges, and sometimes it can be a challenge to make the right decision. Hi, this is Sundar Raj from Francis Xavier Engineering College, Department of Information Technology of 2020 batch. This 4 years of engineering journey taught me many lessons. This is the platform where I found myself. My department faculty guided me in the right way to choose my domain. On my second year of engineering, I got IBM certified on predictive modeling, which helped me to choose my domain as a data scientist. And of course, I have done many projects on data science, which is related to the real-time projects and helped me in a way to get placed in my major. Of course, college means degree and degree means job. Thanks to Francis Xavier Engineering College for providing me a best training regarding the placements, which helped me to get placed in car technologies with the annual CTC of 5 lakhs and also in Cognizant with the annual CTC of 4 lakhs. Being in Francis Xavier Engineering College is like staying on the road to the Damascus, where you can gain the required knowledge to achieve your goals. Thank you.
Data processing task. So only the 20% of the task is taken by the data science and AI, so which is a known truth to everyone. So we are going to discuss about that 80% of the task. So meaning in terms of data ingestion, data gathering, so how to store the data, how to retrieve the data, and finally you can make the data analytics on top of any data source. So the initial part is that's getting that 80% of the data set. That's percentage of the projects which takes times in terms of the big data and the data engineering tasks. So the data engineering is not been that easy in the past. So nowadays, after the introduction of the cloud, the data engineering and the big data projects went comparatively several times easier. So I just wanted to emphasize the importance of data. So how to gather data, how to store the data, how to retrieve, and obviously how to maintain. So this is something that we are going to discuss on this. Maybe I can take up your first questions all after the session. So just we'll start with the sessions. So it is just an average insights that what we have in the current big data. About 5 billion people tweets, text, call, and browse on mobile phones every day. 80% of the current world's data is unstructured. Madam, still I hear a noise. Is that only I am? Is that or everyone is hearing the same thing? Sorry for the interruption.
Everyone is hearing, sir. Mrs. Kavita and Sheikh, two staffs are in not mute.
I've muted Kavita ma'am's. One other person here, sir.
Samsudin, Sheikh Samsudin or something like that.
Yeah, அவங்க மியூட் பண்ணிட்டாங்க.
You can mute all.
Mute all கொடுத்துட்டேன் sir.
From the host side, you mute all.
Okay.
இல்ல ஒரு person no video plus audioல இருக்காங்க.
யாரு சார் இது?
இல்ல அந்த ஜென்ஸ் ஆஃப் Sheikh.
இங்க மியூட்ல தான் காமிக்குது.
Samsudin Safi, sister professor.
மியூட்ல தான் இருக்கு சார் அவங்களோடது. சம்சுதன் அவங்களோட. Is it okay now, Subramanian?
Yeah, yes, madam. Several times better.
Okay.
Thanks, madam. Thank you, sir. Okay, coming back to this point. So 5 billion people tweets and the text every day. 80% of the current world's data is completely unstructured. So 30 billion pieces of the Facebook content is being shared. Walmart handles just 1 million transactions per hour. So I can say even more and more about the data. Just one thing to hype is 4.7 billion searches happening on Google per day. 12 terabytes of tweets is happening per day. So just assume this is the count that is the data that we generate every day. Obviously, most of the data is getting scrapped. Most of the data is not stored. Most of the data just gets deleted. So what happens in the later stage? The primary problem is we are losing the value of the data. So that is the primary difficulty that we are getting when we are losing the data. So obviously now everyone wants to maintain their history of data. Hopefully you all have the photographs saved in your systems. Nowadays people buying the specific hard disks only to save their photographs and videos. Everyone is suffering from the videos and the image storage in their mobile phones. So that is the primary problem of big data everywhere. So a simple individual is facing a problem of saving their mobile phones data as well as their photographs, their images, their videos itself a big challenge. In that case, consider a global audience, how much of data is being generated every day. So this much of data has to be stored and to be maintained. Right. So now saying the requirement of why big data. So just we'll march to the daily data generation. So earlier the data is been OLTP systems. So coming from your RDBMS systems, coming from your web portals, from your mobile apps, that's something that is being generated. So that has been multiplied by 10x when it comes to an email, documentation, weblogs, social media. So that's what happened in the next phase. The third phase is completely mission driven. So satellite images, sensors, bioinformatics, machine to machine logs, audios, videos. Now these are all not layman terminology. These are all not something as a NASA terminology. It's all becoming a layman terminology. Every one of us maintains our own medical history in our own system. So this is something a known factor happening everywhere. So this is something that current big data explosion happens. So as taking a simple example, bioinformatics. So why do we wanted to say all the X-rays, human body level generated reports, everything is being saved? What is the reason behind it? When you wanted to research something, what happened in the past, how the humans are getting infected to a new disease. So what is happening in this particular locality? Every questions are answered based on the bioinformatic reports generated by the people, which is saved by the corresponding corporation authorities. So hopefully it is happening everywhere. So I remember when we are in the college days, once the time Subbulakshmi ma'am said in the class that once she was taking her mother to Vellore CMC hospital. So when she took an medical appointment, when she had a medical checkup, right away after the hospital checkup, they were sending us all the reports to the email IDs. So this happened by the year 2010. Nowadays, I believe most of the hospitals are doing that. At the time of 2010, only CMC did it in Tamil Nadu as placed. But now every hospital is tracking your medical history, medical past records. Now everyone's Google Drive is being stored with the appropriate medical documentation. So it could be your bank documentation, your credit card information. Every documents are getting exported. Just equating with our real life scenario. Fine. Now hopefully you all already exposed this to this particular problem. So now let's approach towards a solution, meaning from an industrial perspective. Right. So by 2005, Google predicted, so this is going to happen. So they released a paper called GFS, Google File System. So what it specifically speaks about is three main characters: volume, variety, velocity. Volume is something that you already know. A huge amount of data is getting loaded every day. Variety. Earlier, it's all only RDBMS. You will get the information only from the database. Now it could be tweeters, it could be tweets, it could be satellite media, it could be from your audios, videos. As I said, I mean medical X-rays. There could be plenty of stuff. Number three is velocity. So the data velocity is extremely huge. So you don't even worry about tweeting multiple times at the same time. So consider from a Twitter server. So every time all of my user is sharing a same content or a similar content or something a different component. So it is not that it is one after other. It is not that it is going to flow in a queue. It may not be into a current. It may not be shrinked at some point of time. It may not be exposed at some point of time. It is always exploded. So the velocity is again a very huge problem. Considering all this, Google has released a white paper called GFS, Google File System, by the year 2005. That's what the entire marketing is called as the Hadoop file system. Right. So this is something a value which I added to this particular part. So keep everything, not only high value data. Why I used to say this is, so current data set, you may not require that. But in the future, that data may help you to predict plenty of things. For example, taking a flu disease. So by 1920, cholera occurred. So now people are looking what happened at the point of when cholera occurred, when during the time of COVID-19. So we are always looking at the history to know what will happen next. So that is how the entire world runs. That is how the entire industry runs. That's how the business runs. So the value of data, current value of data, what you think may not be immediately impacting your business, but the later stage, that may be a key value which will impact your business, right? So the value is something so much important. Just I emphasize that. All right. So let's go into the solution perspective. So how do you want to go further? So you collect your data, store your data, process, and then consume it. Simple. So I just will stick to this particular 4 steps. Give away your inputs to your particular file system, collect it, store it into an appropriate area, process and analyze it, and finally consume it. This is a very simple way of doing your process, regardless of any technology. So this is what we need to do. Fine. So when we come to the big data, so when it calls something as a variety, it is all mostly unstructured data and semi-structured data. That is the main problem to you. It could come from any industry, but the main problem is it could be unstructured and the semi-structured. When it comes to velocity, so we have variety of technology, something called as an event processing, something called as a stream processing. Event processing is something that you can compare with your Facebook share. When you share an image, that is an event. Stream is something that when you are looking at video from an Netflix or an Amazon Prime, so you are streaming the regular input. So that's called as a streaming. So this is a simple example of saying within variety and velocity. Third one is volume. As you all know, the volume is very, very huge. So currently the government is giving you the lot of data which is from the government industry. So data.government from India, EU from Europe, Australia, there is some other organization, data market. Google is giving the public data. UK's organization, UK based data. So everyone is exposing their data for the analytic purposes. So meaning it's all comparatively less sensitive data, which has been exposed to the external world for processing it. So if you have some time, you can just look into this particular sites and you can know the size of the data structures. All right. So we spoke about volume, variety, as well as velocity. Now, the big data industry is a very huge industry. Of course, it is equally paying a high paid industry as similar to the data science industry, more because it is not only in terms of it has a huge variety in terms of technology tools. Data science or the big data tools are having the capability right away to impact your business right away. I'll give you the very n number of use cases to you to understand that. But just wanting you, maybe the young buddies, if you have some time to learn something in other than your regular day-to-day studies, I will definitely prefer you to concentrate on the big data technologies. The big data, as I said, so if you have, if you have the Google window opened in other tab, just look for the big data paying jobs. What is the paid current market pay? You can look into that. And even in this particular time, maybe in terms of COVID-19, there is no hiring or no stop hiring, I would say, in terms of big data and the data science people. So since that is impacting the business directly, so none of the organizations will prefer to hire a data engineer or the data scientist because they hold the business completely. So just explaining you, this is something more than IT and it is very tightly integrated with in terms of business. Right. So I said about most about the problems as well as the opportunities. Let me speak about an big data reference architecture. How an referential architecture should be lived. So you take any technology, either Oracle, SAP, IBM, whoever you call it up, or any open source technologies. Any technology should fall under this particular big data reference technology. So you take your structured data source, maybe from your ERP sources or your CRM sources or from your RDBMS, take their data, and there is a concept called ETL, extraction, transformation, and loading. What exactly this particular process means is your data source could be from your RDBMS, could be from your ERP systems, could be from your CRM systems. These are all the variety of systems, maybe for an embodies. So a variety of systems will be having a different source structure. Just assume you are going to take a table from a student database management system. So FX Engineering College may have a student name as first name and the last name, just as having a two columns. Just taking an example, Infant Jesus may have a same student name, just as an one column, calling as a student name. So taking the other college, maybe Anna University Chennai, so they are having the student initial, first name, and last name. So now you wanted to take all these data, read all those data, put it into a common structure. So maybe here you can maintain a common structure like initial, first name, and last name. So what you want to do is you need to extract all this data, transform all these things into a common structure, then load it into your target. So that's what the particular ETL process is. So the process sounds pretty simple when I explain, but when it in terms of real time, there are tons and tons of data being captured in your source level, which you need to modify every time. You need to transact it. You need to cleanse the data. When you have, some people may have a very commonly at simple I regularly see the people types with the dots, the commas, emoticons, lot many things, which is not required in terms of your final reports or your final analytics. So that needs to be eliminated, right? I take that data, load it into a data repository. The data repository, there are plenty of data repository in the market. So something you called as a master data management, which means the data very rarely gets changed, which is called as master data. Operational data store, a data store which has plenty of operational level information, day-to-day activities, it's called operational data store. A data warehouse, something that you will be having a variety of information, like a students at the same table. Yeah, someone can look at the students marks. For example, your faculty can look at the student marks, but a student should not see the other student marks. So which you need to design your data in that particular mode, like in cube. So who should see what data? So this all kind of concept of data warehousing. I mean, I can speak each and every topic will go for 3 to 4 hours of stuff. Just I will give you an outline. So these are all the high level data repositories that we maintain. At the last, we will have an end user analytics. So you take the data, you extract it, transform it, and load it. Finally, you maintain the data in some data repositories. At the last, you can maintain an end user analytics where you look at your reports. So which student has scored what particular marks on what particular subject. So what is the scorecard of the faculty? So which faculty makes a more number of students to score pretty well. So what is my predictive analytics? So what will happen if I'm going to invest on the stock A? What is going to happen in the next 5 years? What could be the value of that particular stock? So this is particularly end user analytics. So this is, I can share this deck with you. So in fact I have the technology slides also, which is something overloaded at this point of time, hence I did not share with you. The same architecture, if you look at with Oracle, with SAP, with IBM, with open source, so everyone will be fitting into this particular big data reference architecture. All right. So now marching to this, just I can give you a gist of I gave you a gist of high level big data reference architecture. In the meanwhile, most important part is unstructured and the semi-structured data. A web application, weblog application, networks logs, social chats, RFID, sensors, these data gets generated every day. So how you wanted to capture the data and to store that data. So how are we going to do this particular area is the core objective that we are going to discuss now. So when we say the big data, it is a combination of structured data, semi-structured data, and an unstructured data. When I say unstructured data, it can compare with your RDBMS, like your regular Excel sheets, like your regular RDBMS. When I say unstructured, it could be your log data. Most of the time, unstructured data, I mean, semi-structured data is called as your log data. It has some structure, but it is hard for you to interpret. Unstructured is something that you can compare with your network logs, your social chats, emails, feeds, Facebook chats, or the Facebook shares. These are all you could call it as an unstructured data set. So how are we going to maintain all these particular data sets in a right place with a huge amount of processing capabilities, right? So when we say that the one answer for the big data is Hadoop, so most of the people think Hadoop is something in rocket science. It is not actually the case. The point is just take one out, maybe assume that if your laptop can process a data of about 1 GB. So what we can do is we can take 4 laptops together and we can combine the processing power together so that we can process the data of about 4 gigs of the data. A very simple math. So just if you don't have enough RAM or the processing power, what you do, you just go to a shop, buy an additional RAM, just add it into your system. The same thing, we are going to combine your machines together. In a technical language, a commodity of machines combined together is called as a Hadoop. So what we take, so we will be taking a simple, maybe you can assume each and every slave node is like a one personal computer. So taking one personal computer and you can join all 4 level of personal computers connected together with the master node. So master is someone who is going to control your personal computers. So that's what the capability of your master is. Maybe you can consider your master as like your server system and the slave node like your own personal computers. So what could be the real advantage? So I'm going to join all 4 this together. So what is my real advantage? The first advantage is you can store more data because everyone gives their hard disk free. So assume that each and every hard disk is about 1 terabyte of data store. When you have the 4 terabytes of, and when you have the 4 systems combined together, now you have the 4 terabytes of storage, 4 gigs of memory. So that's a very simple layman understanding. Fine. So now I have my hardware. What I'm going to do next? So what we are going to do next is we will be splitting the data and we will be saving into the appropriate machine. So I assume I have 3 gigs of data. Just I'll split it 0.75 gigs of each of the data into chunks of 4 different chunks and store it into 4 different machines. Now what happens? My data gets splitted and my data gets parallelly processed. In that case, if I'm just taking a layman example, you wanted to assemble a one deck of card. Maybe you will be having each and every deck will be the 4 different flaws. So each and every suit. So for a spade, heart, spade, a diamond, as well as claver. So you wanted to arrange it according to their own flaws. So assume you are going to do this for 60 minutes. A single person may take the time of doing this in 60 minutes. The same thing, if 4 people are going to do that, it should be taking 15 minutes plus 1. So because each person will be taking an each suit, meaning one person could be taking the heart, one person could be taking the claw, one person should be taking a spade, and then assembling this all together should be taking a further 1 more minute. So the 60-minute task will get over by 16 minutes. So this is the process of parallel processing from a layman example. Instead of doing a single person, 4 different people will be doing the same task, so that you should be able to reduce the time and effort. So that is the core objective of Hadoop. I can speak about Hadoop for more than 3 to 4 hours. There are a lot of technical concepts, but I leave it to you. I prefer you people, if you are really interested to learn, to just drop me an email. So here is my email ID, just I missed to tell you. So shivadataanalytics@gmail.com. So if you wanted to speak more about Hadoop and its technology component, I'll be glad to help. I have plenty of materials. I can give you share you the materials and you can take it up. But from a layman understanding, Hadoop is something, a distributed file system which is distributed across the different machines, where you store your data across different machines, where you will be sharing your processing capability within the machines. So that's what Hadoop is going to do. So now this Hadoop is deployed in an organization level. So there are plenty of tools on top of Hadoop ecosystem. Hadoop is not a single tool. It is a framework where it has about 2,500 tools in the market. So even from a last week to this week, there will be a new tool introduced in this particular area. But that's a different story. But end of the day, conceptual analysis, concept remains the same thing. The tool analysis may different from people to people. Just I wanted to bring you something to your mindset, to your vision. So the first one is distributed storage, HDFS, Hadoop Distributed File System. That's what Google preached us. So you can take your data, you can distribute it, and you can store it across different machines. MapReduce, which we are going to see in the next slide. What is MapReduce? Just to hold on with the MapReduce alone. So there is something called NoSQL database. Hopefully you could have heard it in someone or other. So which is called as an you can maintain your data without any schema. So that's a very simple introduction, but it has plenty of things to do. So NoSQL database is something that Hadoop has offered on top of the HDFS, which you can use it for the NoSQL purposes. When you wanted to maintain a schemaless definition, you can use it. One simple example is Google is using the NoSQL database. For example, assume myself, I have a Gmail account. This is my first slot is Gmail account. I have an YouTube account. I have a Google Drive account, but I don't have any account with respect to Hangout. So in other places, it will just make a tick mark that I have an account and it will store the current information. For someone in this particular call, maybe having no Gmail account, but they can have the YouTube account. They can have the Hangouts call. They can have the Google Drive. So something, this is how they maintain. If someone is having only Gmail account, only this particular box is effect. So you cannot have the similar kind of structure in a RDBMS. That's why we go for a NoSQL database. If these are all the particular scenario to maintain the schemaless definitions. All right. So machine learning nowadays, after the Python, your machine learning, TensorFlow, these kind of frameworks comes into the picture. Mahout is dropped out almost, but in terms of Apache ecosystem, Mahout is known as a machine learning framework for processing the data science techniques. So Pig and Hive. So these two are, I mean, most of the things you will be seeing only the animals names as part of the tool names. So one thing, as for all the 2500 tools, I would say. So one thing, Hive is something, a SQL query that could connect to your HDFS and it could able to fetch the information from your HDFS. Pig is again a language designed by Yahoo only for their community. Later stage, they gave it as part of Apache. So Pig Latin is comparatively most easiest scripting language accessible on top of Hadoop ecosystem. So when these two are the primary querying system on top of HDFS. Workflow and scheduling part. So assume you that you wanted to run a script after 1 hour, after 2 hours, or you wanted to run a script every 5 minutes once. Just you wanted to schedule it. That will be taken care by Woozy. Zookeeper is like an coordinator. Maybe you can consider like with your class representative who just coordinates between your faculty, between your head of department and the students. So a coordinator to conduct the events properly between the Hadoop ecosystem. Last but not the least, where you can use the ODBC, JDBC drivers, scoops or the REST APIs to connect with the external forums. So assume you wanted to write a Java code, you wanted to create a table, you can make an ODBC connectivity with your database and you can write your code and you can create something here. So this is a simple data integration technique that I give you. Maybe I mean, if people are at the third year or the final year students can match yourself that how you are able to connect your Java code with your RDBMS, with your JDBC or ODBC drivers. So that's the same thing. If you just look into Google, just get an ODBC strings to connect with your database strings. The same way you can connect the Hadoop and you can create it out. And finally, an Ambari. So Ambari is something that is a dashboard which will be showing which particular, I mean, there will be thousands and thousands of infrastructures are being connected together. When you say Hadoop, the data storage devices alone will be going more than thousands and thousands of machines will be connected together. Of course, if you look at LinkedIn, I heard that they are connected with the 1 million machines together. In that case, a proper management and monitoring tool is required on top of it so that they can look at it, which particular system goes down, which particular system comes up. So that is something that Ambari is going to do. So that's what an Hadoop ecosystems Ambari, which will help you to do the management and monitoring purposes. All right. So I just gave you the glimpse of tools, but not for all the 2500. I just gave you the primary glimpse of the tools. Right. So I was repeatedly speaking about MapReduce. So when you get it sometimes to read about Hadoop, you could not cross this particular word called MapReduce. What primary it does? So assume you are getting a data called deer, beer, river. So maybe this is first record, maybe first row or second row, third row. Taking all these records, load it into an appropriate system. The first row goes into the first system, second row goes into second system, third row goes into second system. The primary objective is just you wanted to make and count which particular parameter comes how many times, right? How it does is the first part is mapping the data. So take this data, they make a count of each and every time. So deer is one time, beer is one time, river is one time. The same thing, car is one, river is one, right? So now you make and count for each and every time. The next step is you are going to shuffle your data. So now what you do, you are going to shuffle your data wherever you have your data, just map it into the appropriate area. So you have 3 types of car, group it together. You have beer which have 2 times. When you have deer, you have 2 times, river it. So the next step is reducing. So you are going to now make a calculation of count. So beer is twice, car is thrice, deer is twice, river is twice. Now finally you are giving the final result. All right. If you are going to do this on the same system, just I gave you a simple example of doing these 3 records. So if you are having more than thousands and thousands of records, assume you have an 1 million record. In that case, making a count on top of this system in a single system may take more than 24 hours of time. Just making an example. If you are going to do this using MapReduce, it may get to reduce maybe comparatively less than 4 hours of time. So this is the primary objective of MapReduce. You split your tasks, split your data, do it parallelly so that you can achieve the better result. This is the primary objective of MapReduce. All right. So saying an advantage, there is an other disadvantage on top of MapReduce as well. The primary disadvantage is you take the data, split it in a disk, map it in a disk, again you shuffle it in a disk, you reduce it in a disk, finally you produce it in a disk. So most of you know, if you have get a chance to learn a little bit about of RDBMS, whenever you take a data outside of disk, you will be facing a problem of disk IO. Either you write it to a disk or you read it from the disk. It is going to take a bit of time. So when you are going to do the same task again and again and again, your performance will go extremely low. In that case, we are maintaining a disk IO throughput time. I mean, that's what the primary disadvantage. We will be getting the disk IO throughput of time. So which will take a lot of resources and it will consume a lot of troubles as well. So saying, just repeating it. So Hadoop is something that you are having a master and slave architecture. You can split your data. You can process your data in parallel. That's what Hadoop is going to do. So Hadoop has a lot of primary tools. I mean, lot 2,500 tools. But primarily, we have looked about, discussed about MapReduce, HDFS, Hive, Pig, Mahout, HBase, and what is the management tool, what is the scheduling tool, what is the coordination tool. So saying that the primary functionality of Hadoop is a MapReduce. A MapReduce primary objective is split your data, map your data, shuffle and reduce your data, which will increase the performance in terms of time and efficiency so that you will not be losing a lot of time. And a parallel, if someone is going to work on the same task, definitely your effort is going to be going down. So that is something advantage. But the primary problem is, technically speaking, when you store your disk and when you store your data and when you fetch your data from your disk, absolutely you will be facing a disk input output throughput issue. So that you already know. All right. Coming back, let me tell you an use case for Hadoop. So what happened in the real-time industry? So maybe 2012 I joined in my industry. So where we are working on a stock exchange report. So where we wanted to give an real-time data to the stock exchange. But we are already more than, we are not able to give the data at least before 3 days of time. Why? Because the data goes beyond 70 TB for every 3 days. So that is the real-time scenario that I worked on. So which we never heard upon in my college days. So which is extremely difficult to manage it in a single RDBMS. Your RDBMS could not handle a 70 TB of data to process it and to give the report in a single set of time. Assume you are going to write a select star from your table. In that case, for a 70 TB of data, definitely you are gone. So you could not able to do that within a single day, within hours of time. So that's why we moved from RDBMS to Hadoop. So taking all the data from the primary RDBMS, just remember I said we moved the data from RDBMS to Hadoop. That doesn't mean we killed the RDBMS. I'll just come to that. Just we moved the data from RDBMS to Hadoop. Right. So the next step is we did the parallel MapReduce engine. Whatever I said, the same thing what we've seen this before screen. We did the MapReduce. The next step is we generated the reports out of it. So earlier the report from an RDBMS took me about 3 days of time. So now my report is able to generate within 16 hours. So 3 days is almost 48 hours. So we are able to do the same task in 16 hours of time because we splitted the data, we parallelize the efficiency, we are able to do it parallelize with a massive computing power so that we are able to do that. If the same report, if we are going to take on top of RDBMS, so it is going to generate the report within 48 hours of time. So this is able to generate my time at least 3 times of my RDBMS. That is the primary advantage. Second thing, I was saying sometime back, we are moving the data from RDBMS to Hadoop. That doesn't mean we are killing the RDBMS. RDBMS should be live always. RDBMS will help for your OLTP systems. OLTP meaning online transactional processing. So whatever data you insert, you update, you delete will be maintained by your RDBMS. But if you wanted to know what is happening from your database, meaning this is you are writing the data, this is you are reading the data. When we are reading the data, that is called as OLAP, online analytical processing. In such case, Hadoop is the best fit. So this is something and your online processing is going to do. If you are going to read the data in a report or you are going to run a simple select query, you want to download your data as an Excel sheet, everything comes under online analytical processing. That's what your Hadoop is doing. Online transactional processing is whenever you are going to insert a data, whenever you are going to write a data, when you are going to update, delete. Layman terminology is OLTP is called as write, OLAP is called as read. Very simple. So always whenever you write, you use OLTP. Whenever you read, you use OLAP. So that's what we do in a primary layman understanding. So even in my daily day-to-day interview experience, so I am hiring the data engineers in a periodical intervals. So there are still people says, when Hadoop is doing an extraordinary task, let me kill my RDBMS, which is an completely and no understanding about the data technologies at all. So RDBMS is not supposed to kill, but you are reducing the efforts of RDBMS for the purpose of OLAP by moving the data into Hadoop. That's what the overall objective is. Just I said a real-time use case, taking a 70 TB of data from RDBMS, load it into Hadoop, run all my MapReduce codes, and generate the reports, which will generate your time. I mean, which will reduce your time from 48 hours to 16 hours. So that's what your primary Hadoop system does. All right, that is not the end of this particular session. Even if you remember, I was saying you my disk input output time is extremely low. So the project requirement says, hey, you people did a great job to reduce from 48 to 16 hours. You guys are really extremely great. But that is not the end of the story. We want even more less amount of time. So we people asked, hey, we built a massive data storage systems for you. We had a parallel systems for you, huge amount of money and the effort involved in this. What else you want to do? So they said, to the max of 16 hours, they can come up, they can give us a time of 3 hours because they want to give this data to the stock exchange or share market. Hopefully, if you people have an access to the money control website, money control app, even now I think today's stock is running. So if you look into that, every day, every minute, every second is updated with the data. So they said, if you can't give a near real-time data, that is okay, and real-time data, that is okay, but at least give us a near real-time data. To the max of 3 hours we can give us. But think about it, 70 TB of data, we need to give it the reports within 3 hours of time. How it is possible? That's what we are going to discuss next. So what I said is earlier, I take the input, I read it, and I put it into map, and then again I read it, I put it into shuffle. So what happens is, the layman understanding is, if you have everything into your disks, it is going to take much and much of time because your disks are prone to disk IO. So that's what we discussed earlier. In fact, you people, most of the people who have a good knowledge in terms of hardware could be knowing is disk suffers from IO. So what is the only option to come out of it? Take all the data, put it in the RAM instead of disk. So in that case, assume you don't have a hard disk and you are going to store everything into your RAM. So the primary advantage why Hadoop does not say this particular solution is, maybe by 2003, when I was in my 7th standard, I believe, so 7th class. So my dad bought me a personal computer which is 128 MB of RAM. Trust me, that is the highest configuration at the point of 2003. Now 128 MB RAM is not even enough for a kid to play its own game, not even a simple game. So people expect minimal of 4 gigs of RAM if my understanding is not wrong. So there are people just goes for 1 TB of RAM, very common, and people add their GPUs, gaming, CPU, gaming processing units to their laptops, and it is very now when you compare it 2003 to 2020, there is a very huge increase in the RAM usage. The primary reason is the cost of the RAM is getting low day after day. If you look at it, your mobile phones are now operating with 64 gigs of RAM. So why it happens? Because the RAM's cost is going down. In that case, you can try to replace your disks with RAM. So that is the primary idea we bought in. So take all my data, instead of putting into the disks, let me put it into the RAM and then query it frequently. So assume when you have everything in your RAM, right? Just assume in your laptop. So you are operating it in a very huge span of time. When you put it in the disks, just click on your saved Word document, it takes 2 minutes of time. When it's already live in the RAM, it is not taking you time at all, right? So that's what we did. So which took about 10 to 100x times faster than my networks and the disk. So that's what we primarily achieved by moving this particular storage from disks to RAM. Maybe electronic students can understand this more pretty well. So when you move the data from disk towards RAM, you can get a better performance, after of course a better speed of accessing the data. All right. When you go to the next level, so when we put everything in RAM, that particular thing is called as in-memory distributed file system. That's a technology we call it as a Spark. So Hadoop and Spark is almost similar to each other. Hadoop is something will always run on top of disks. Spark is something always run on top of RAM. That's a primary disadvantage. Now you can see the difference between Hadoop and the Spark. So Hadoop is always stored in the disk. Spark always runs in memory completely. If you want, you can use your disks, but if you use disk, it will be slow. But if you use RAM, it will be faster. So you have an option of storing between disks and the RAM. So operations is, if you look at the Hadoop, it is always mapping and reducing. In Spark, you have variety of things to do: mapping, reducing, joining, sampling, machine learning, a lot many. There are plenty of operations. Execution model is batch-based model here. Batch in the sense, just take the yesterday's data and process it today. So Spark is can operate yesterday's data, today's data, in fact the current data. So that's its primary advantage. You make a tweet right away, you'll be seeing that in your report within 3 minutes of time. So the programming environment from a Hadoop MapReduce is mostly Java. But in terms of Spark, it is Scala, Java, R, and Python. So most of the times nowadays, I believe that engineering students is learning the Python in their regular curriculum. And of course, data scientists, data engineers, primary choice of learning the tool is always Python. If you look at it, Python has a no competition, and Java is not a competitor for Python. Only the web developments, I mean the portal, is Androids, the screens are like an UI UX kind of stuff remains in Java. All the database, data science, data engineering tasks go with the Python. So that is something that fresh people, you can take my words for sure. If you guys are interested in UI, UX, Android, this kind of area, go ahead with complete within Java. If you guys are interested with the data structures, data science, big data stuff, go with the Python. Take it from me. This is for sure. This is the market trend. And don't mix and match. So Python have the capability of doing the web designs. Python have an capability of generating the UI screen, but don't go with that because Python capability is not that much great when compared to the Java in terms of UI and UX. The same thing is applicable for Java. Java has the capability of doing the data engineering, data science, big data technologies, but don't go with the Java. Python is comparatively several times simpler, right? So just taking an example, I mean, this is a very common question that I get it from the people. So just taking an example from Thirukkural, "Evvadurevathu ulagu, ulagathodu avvadurevathu arivu," meaning what other people's following, what other people going, how the entire market is marched, go in that particular direction. Do not go into an alternative direction, which will make you to waste your time and your effort. So this is a simple thing about Java and Python. Just I made it as a glimpse. All right. So this is I made a higher level comparison between Hadoop and Spark. Maybe I can give you a full proof. I mean, a proof with respect to what we did in Hadoop and what we did it in Spark. So if you guys have some exposure to an data science, there is a very common algorithm called K-means algorithm and the logistic regression, both of the data science algorithm. If you don't know about algorithm, not an issue, which is just a huge amount of resource consuming algorithm, these two are. So when we run the same algorithm using Hadoop, it takes about 121 seconds. The same thing when we do it in Spark, it takes just 4.1 seconds. Same thing when we are going to do the same data with the logistic regression, Hadoop takes about 80 seconds of time. Spark takes about 0.96 seconds of time. So that's the primary disadvantage. How if you are going to replace a RAM with the RAM instead of disk, you'll be having this much amount of difference. All right. So if you go into the data size, just I am making a layman example. So take it from the Google. So if your data size is 100 on 2.5 TB and the same database if you are compare, it is going to take 72 minutes for Hadoop and it is going to take 23 minutes for Spark. So of course, if you the same thing, if you are going to do with your RDBMS, it may take more than 24 hours of at least 24 hours of time. So that gets reduced to 72 minutes. That gets reduced to 23 minutes. So this is the core objective of this data engineers or the big data professionals to this. So the Spark has variety of components, like you can write your Spark SQL queries. Spark streaming is something whenever you are, just assume that today's the election is going on. So just take that tweet of called Tamil Nadu election, TN election hash tweet. So take that particular data continuously. Whoever tweets on that particular component, you can take that and you can push that input into the Spark engine. So take the data from real time and put it into the core storage area. Later stage, you can analyze it. So taking the data in real time is called a Spark stream. Machine learning, obviously, you know, it is all regression, classification, clustering, so that completed data science technique. Graphical database. So this is something called as a graph database, like LinkedIn, Facebook uses in the backend. So who connects with whom? So I am the friend of Sublakshmi madam. So someone in the call is again a friend of mine. So Sublakshmi madam will be getting that particular person as a mutual friend as a friend recommendation. So this is a graph database. Graph database is a very, very vast area, but that is something is also a part of Spark component. Right? These are all the primary component of the Spark. Just I will give you a very good use case about this particular Spark. So this is the current time. People are more discussing about the biomedical data science use cases. So there is a technique called genome analysis. So I'm not sure how many of you heard this. So what does it means is, so they will take the human X-rays, taking the blood test, taking a lot of human body samples, and they are giving us a test, right? The same thing, taking the human genes, and there is an people set of PhDs or the doctors working on the human genes to say what particular disease this particular person is affected, or in the next 5 years this particular genes are going to be affected by what particular disease. So I believe that this is successful in terms of diabetes prediction. So the people who are going to get in the next 5 years or the 10 years who is going to get a diabetes, they are taking the precaution medicines. That is not it is not that you are taking the medicines after you take a disease or something else. You have to take a medicine before you get affected, something like a proactive measure. So the same genomic analysis is something in very, very huge area. In fact, I heard COVID-19 research is also happening on in terms of genomic analysis as well. So taking the genetic study of the human body, and they are researching on top of it. So this particular human genes, if you take that and if you read it, it is completely non-readable format. I just got a chance to look into this. The human readable format genes will be like this. So something that no one could able to read this one. So a single as human genome is going to take more than 3 terabytes of size of data. So what we are going to do is they are going to take this data and they are going to compare with the previous human genomes. Assume it's a cancer test. So I have a sample of cancer genes in my historical database. If I wanted to compare the human genomes with the cancer cells, and I wanted to come up this particular person is affected by cancer or not. That's a primary simple use case. So when you give this particular data of 3 terabytes from the current genomes, and you have hundreds of terabytes in your history for having the past human genomes, you wanted to compare these both together, just a layman comparison, and you wanted to say whether this particular disease is affected or not affected. So that's what the simple question they have. But the processing of this particular thing takes more than more than 15 days of time. So there was an organization in Spain who does it earlier. Now I believe Google have a primary solution as Google Genomics. So 15 days of time taken by an organization to get your test report, because they wanted to compare a 3 TB of terabyte with then thousands and thousands of terabytes of data set. In that case, they took a time. So what they did is they took the same data, load it into the Spark engine on top of completely on top of the RAM, fast data also on top of the RAM. So these two are loaded into the Spark engine. So whatever I said, the Spark, the same thing, in-memory computer, they are loaded into that. So from 15 days of time, they are able to do the same thing in 16 minutes. A human just goes into the genomic analysis shop, use their genome, get the results in the next 16 minutes. So that is the primary power of Spark. Sometime back, I was saying you, even in this COVID-19, entire business is down. The data engineers or the data scientists are not lagging their job as much as like the other people. The primary reason is the data engineering tasks are well embedded with the business. So a business, the primary business of this genome is going to give the results to the customers by comparing with the past data. So when that is going to be done by the data engineers, they are not going to kill their business. For example, they could have hired the guy who is going to do the data entry, primary person who is doing the UI design or an Android app developer could have been fired, maybe just taking as an example. But data scientists and data engineers are very well tightly embedded with the business. That's why their job is much more safer comparatively. Almost they are well paid also, because they are able to reduce the time from 15 days to 16 minutes. That is impacting my business like anything, and they are taking me to the heaven. In that case, this is helping me. So this is something that one of the primary data handling technique. All right. So the primary topic of today is big data and cloud. So hopefully somewhere or other you could have heard about the cloud computing. What it really means is, so it doesn't mean that you have your own physical infrastructure. You are going to use someone's computer. Just I'm putting it in a very layman's language. It is not your computer, it's someone's computer. You are going to store your data there. You are going to process that data there. You are going to use their applications, use their resources to process your application and get the results back. So this is what cloud computing is. Why big data needs to be on top of cloud? That's the primary concern. Because big data, as I said, assume as an organization with a business of maybe 100 million should be investing about 1 million of money in the resources for their infrastructure, because the infrastructure is going extremely day by day very higher. The data is high. In that case, maintain that in your physical infrastructure is not that easy. So you need to, every daily basis, you need to buy the new disks, new RAMs, new machines, new routers, new networks, everything you need to buy. So what people think is, instead of we maintain everything, let's put it on someone's computer, let them maintain for me, so that I'll pay them a less charge than I maintain. So that is something. Either you buy a car or you go on a taxi ride. I am not going to use my car all the 24/7, and I am not going to use it in that case. So why do I pay 10 lakhs and buy a car? Instead, I just pay 1 lakh a year so that I can use someone's car. So that's what the cloud computing concept is. You are going to use someone's computer. So what does the server to serverless means? So the big data engineering tasks are all always earlier it's all server oriented. Now what people said is, take your code, put it in some particular machine, get the output and walk away. Don't maintain your server always, so that you will be ending up paying. So at taking that, I'm going to run 10 queries a month. So why do I buy a server and I maintain it? I need to buy a server. I need to put it in a very high configuration AC machines. I deploy someone like an maintenance people to take care of my server, like an admins or multiple admins to maintain my server, and then I'm going to generate the I'm going to maintain it out. So which is extremely hard. Instead, I'll have my own serverless application. Take my data, put it somewhere, run it in that particular server, generate the results. So I need not pay for my server. So that will maintain tons and tons of money for me. All right. Whenever you speak about cloud, people always raise a concern. Hey, what will happen if I'm going to load my data in someone's my computer? Of course, that's a valid question. But now current situation is an individual organization maintaining all their data and infrastructure is not an easy joke. If someone is against cloud computing, they are going to waste tons of money by maintaining the infrastructure alone. That's the primary disadvantage of cloud computing. I mean, primary disadvantage as saying a concern as cloud computing. So security is a valid concern, but nowadays you have three main players in market. One is Amazon, other one is Azure, produced by Microsoft. Third one is GCP, Google Cloud Platform. So first one is Amazon product, second one is Microsoft product, third one is Google Cloud product. Amazon product is ruling the market more than 55%. Azure is almost 30%. GCP is 3%. Don't ask me where is the remaining people. So there are plenty of vendors in the meanwhile. So they are taking care of. But Amazon is ruling the market with no doubt. Azure is almost competing with Microsoft. So this is how it is going in the current market. Right. So what these people are promising it, at least the top three vendors, so they are giving you a virtual private channel. So where all your data is completely maintained on an individual network, on an individual channel. So even what Amazon promises, even Amazon wants to look. So assume this is your virtual private channel. If Amazon wants to look into this one, they could not able to do. Only you people will be having an authentication to go inside and to come outside. So that's what they are promising as a virtual private cloud. Of course, Azure is saying the same thing. Google Cloud is also saying the same thing. And all your data resides in their network is always encrypted, stored, well maintained. So that's what these people do. Auto scaling is something that assume that you are storing 1 terabytes of data until today. Suddenly you are seeing an increase tomorrow for the 10 gigs, day after tomorrow again 10 gigs. So every day that you cannot go and buy a new 10 gigs of data and to load it into your system and to increase it. So you have an 1 TB of data today, you increase it tomorrow about 10 gigs, day after tomorrow you increase 10 gigs. Then the later stage, you don't record this particular data, you don't record it, you delete it, again it will get shrink. So it is not that you need to maintain your infrastructure. So it is scalable on its own. So if you load more data, it will increase. If you reduce less data, it will reduce. So that is a primary thing of auto scalability. Cost, of course, I said sometime back. So maintaining a server, paying to an admin guy, maintenance cost like maintaining air conditioners, rooms, extraordinary things. That is a very huge cost nowadays because it is not like olden days. So your data is getting exported 3 times a day than yesterday. In that case, maintaining is not that easy. Cost is going to be more and more high. So that's the primary disadvantage of cost. I mean, that's the primary advantages of cost when it comes to cloud computing. Of course, an ease of deployment. So Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud Platform is giving you variety of tools to deploy, to maintain to your codes. Assuming that taking a Hadoop or a web UI develop or a mobile kit development, they had given their own applications to do the same task in a comparatively easier way. So they have developed their own frameworks, their own tools, which is now ruling the market. Because instead you go ahead and deploy X or Y tool into their system. Assume that you are going to deploy Oracle on top of Amazon is costlier for you. Instead, if you deploy Amazon's own RDBMS, it will be comparatively cheaper. So that's what this infrastructure is going to give you out, which will reduce a much of time in terms of deployment. Right? Fine. I'm just going to the next slide. Of course, this is my last slide. So Amazon data lake. So when I say data lake, it is again a huge amount of big data just connected together and generated together. So what Amazon does is the same big data reference architecture. They just take the data source and they put it into a common data store. So they have a common data store called as an S3, which is very cheaper storage. Assume that you are going to put 8 gigs of data per month and you are going to access all the 1 gig. Assume you are going to access only 1 gigs of data. In that case, you will be paying just $1 to them per month. So if the same 8 gigs of data, just multiply this with 800 and you are going to take 8 gigs of data instead of 1 disk. So it is not $1 you will be paying, you will be paying $8. The same thing, think about that if you are going to run a hard disk, RAM, server, everything, and if you are going to maintain your own system, what is going to be the cost? So that is going to be extremely huge. That's the primary reason we just support for the cloud-based data engineering task. So they give plenty of tools. So Glue is their own ETL tool. EMR is their own Hadoop framework. QuickSight is their own reporting tool. Machine learning, obviously, instead of you write your code in Python, they given their own machine learning framework. Lambda is something in serverless framework. Just you take
Your
your
room.
sorry. Okay. So just you take your data, run the code, and you generate the results. Athena is something that is an endpoint that anyone can access it out. So there are hundreds and hundreds of tools in Amazon, but I'm not going in depth about that. Just I'm giving a very high level information about you. So young buddies who wants to put their career in cloud. So there are variety of Amazon certification. Amazon developer, Amazon solution architect, Amazon big data architect, Amazon big data. So anyone take this as an experience. Maybe they will be taking about 15K about it's an examination cost. I believe they are giving a free resource count for their students. So students can use the Amazon services at free of cost to a certain extent. So you can practice your own Amazon services and you can go for your examinations. Well, assume that I'm coming for an interview. If some student is having an Amazon certificate on top of it, I'm not just marketing for Amazon. Either it is for Amazon or Azure or Google Cloud. So if some student is having a cloud-based certification, I'd be definitely interested to roll out an offer to that particular candidate because the current world, not even most of the experienced professionals don't have an Amazon certificate on their profiles, or they don't have a cloud-based experience on their profiles. Not even 50% people are having that. So if some fresher is going to give me that exposure, I'll be really glad to roll out an offer to that particular student. So that is something that I would like to highlight to you. So you can always look at Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud Platform. You can make a practice on their site. If you are interested, you can go up for a certification in Amazon, Google Cloud. Just don't go for an Oracle or the Java certifications. That those are gone. So I don't wanted to hear something from your Oracle certification or any other Java NIT certification. That is no value to me. But this is something is good, making a good value, good impression to me, because it is certified by someone at an international level, not like an NIT, CSC. Don't pay your money and waste it over here. I'm seeing the student community regularly paying for the Java, .NET, C++, and going to this particular institutions and wasting their time, of course, wasting their money. You can learn all those with YouTube or the Coursera or edX sites in your home itself. They are not going to teach better than that. But these people are also not going to teach you. There are a lot of free web editions in their Amazon site. You can go ahead and learn, and you can give up an exam. They are charging only for the exams, not for your learnings. So that certifications will really help you to learn more, practice more. When you are going to prepare for that certification, you will be indirectly learning a lot of concepts as well as the Amazon tools. So that will help you to crack a lot of interviews. So that's something I would be always preferring the students, and just take it as my opinion as an expert in terms of people going for NIT, CSC, or any other local institutions by paying a huge amount of money. I'm fine to spend 1 or 2K to this particular people, but spending them 10 or 20, 30K is definitely useless, and they are not going to give that value back to you. So that is something I would prefer you to have that in your mind when you go for external classes. All right. I think I give you some career aspirations. Last thing, use case. Just making it very simple. The same example. So with this 800 GB of data size, the real-time data is 80 TB. So the 80 TB of data, if I'm going to maintain my physical infrastructure, every year I may need to pay about 100K dollars. The same thing if I'm going to use it in Amazon, I may pay about 1K dollars. Just I'm making a layman example. So the difference is this. So the profit is about 99K dollars. If I'm going to maintain on my own, I have to pay 100K dollars. If it is very simple, if I put it in the cloud, I can reduce the cost up to 1K dollars. So the primary thing, if you look at the current market, so the next 2 years is obviously a recession-based industry as per my prediction. So everyone is trying to reduce their cost as much as possible towards the technologies, towards the tools. If someone is giving them an opportunity to reduce the cost of their investment, they'll be really happy. Most of the current model is running in the 100K model, whatever I said. So what should happen is most of the people are providing interest to move towards an 1K model. So that's what the cloud-based data analytics tools are going to provide you. So if you have that skill set, the ratio for you to get hired is more. So that's what I would extend it to the student community. And I think that's all I have for you. So this is a very, very huge amount of time. I mean, it's a huge amount of topic. I can take more than of 8 hours of session on the same thing with the tools, the practical example. Within 1.5 hours, I just gave you the glimpse of this. So with this, I stop, and over to you guys. So you can ask me any questions, whatever you have.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, myself Jaiprakash from Don Bosco, Bangalore.
Hello, Jaiprakash.
Yes, sir. Actually, I have one question. Is there any possibility of data leakage in storage?
Sorry, come again. Data lake?
Data leakage.
Uh-huh.
Is there any possibility of where data can leak?
Absolutely. Answer is yes. Yes, there are plenty of chances. Of course, that is one of the threat that we need to consider. The primary thing is it's all about the architecture what we design. Either it is physical infrastructure or it is an third party like a cloud infrastructure. There are a lot of chances for an data leakage. But the thing is, the architecture needs to be so much perfect and clear, so that you people should be, I mean, it is not about the data leakage chances could be completely arrested. It is not that someone is exposing to the external world, and it is a mistake from an architectural side, I would say. If the architecture is perfect, there is no issues with respect to data leakage. So that then and there you are seeing the news that there is a data leakage at the X company or a Y company. It is because of the errors that happen at the level of architecture. When I mean as an architecture, it is not only the technology architecture. It includes anything and everything. So I would suggest that if it's a network, it is a data security, data storage, data processing, or a data access given to the external third-party environment. So anyone could able to make a mistake. So the entire architecture should be perfect so that you can avoid the data leakage.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right. So I see a question in the chat. So thanks for your appreciations. Demo sessions on how to work with Hadoop and Spark if possible in future. Definitely, Arul Jyoti, I can take it up. I shall help you in that, not an issue. And if you want, you can just drop me an email to shivadataanalytics@gmail.com. I shall help you in terms of learning with the current. Before that time comes up, I'll speak to Subbu Madam if there is a chance to take you for a real-time working, or I mean workshop kind of stuff, that I can do that. But in the meanwhile, if you are interested, just drop me an email. I can give you the VM. I can give you that sample document to do that. So Jayanti Venkat, someone asked me if there are tools to analyze the big data. Yeah, there are plenty of tools to analyze in the big data, but I would start using the Hadoop and the Spark initially. That is the primary tools I would suggest. And thanks for all your appreciations. So share email ID in the chat box. Here you go. shivadataanalytics@gmail.com. How data mining and big data was linked. So data mining is something that you are going to get the data from a common data store, and you are going to apply your algorithms. Either it could be classification, clustering, regression, association, or a deep learning model. Anything is fine. So that particular data source needs to get loaded with the right data set you want. Assume that you wanted to do an data analytics on top of Twitter, or a data mining on top of tweets today. So someone has to give you all the tweets grouped together. So then only you can make all the data gets assembled together, and you can do that. So the data store is your big data, and the data science is your data mining. So that's what a simple layman example. Thank you, Jayanti. Glad you asked that question. So I think I answered everything in the chat box. Do you have anything else?
Dear participants, if you have any queries, you can raise. The feedback link will be posted to you shortly now. And at this point of juncture, we have our alumni coordinator, Mr. G. Aravind Swaminathan, amongst us. I invite Aravind Swaminathan sir to share a few words.
Shiva?
Hello, sir. How are you?
I am doing good, Shiva. So it's wonderful to have you today in this webinar. It was a wonderful session and sharing your expertise. And I am so glad to meet you after a long time. And it's a proud moment for us, for our alumni and our students to come and share their expertise. It's we are so honored by you. And in a nutshell, I wish to say that we are so proud of you and also about your knowledge. And thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise. Thank you so much, and love and regards to all at home, and God bless. Thank you so much, Mark. Wish you all
Thank
the
you, sir.
best.
Thank you. So, thank you, sir. All obtained from Francis Xavier. So, thank you for you people, specifically you and Subbulakshmi Madam, and all the Francis Xavier faculties. Thank you for the students. Thank you so much. So,
Thank you so much, Siva Subramanian.
Thank you.
And I wholeheartedly, I would like to thank you and wish you, like, it was a very great session. Like, you gave a complete insight about the big data analytics, and point just keep flowing. Okay, so I know that you are a very passionate technocrat. Okay, so you can speak about technology for hours, I know. So we are very proud of you that sharing your details will help the participants as well as our students. So we are very sorry. 1 second. Thankful to you for your acceptance. And amidst your busy schedule, I know you are busy. We couldn't even contact you over phone. You're so much busy with your job, but still you accepted our invitation, and morning hours you gave your time. So our thanks from the Department of Information Technology, the alumni cell, as well as from Francis Xavier Engineering College, and convey my regards to your family. And I wish you all the best. May God bless you, dear Subha Subramanian. Thank you all of
Thank you, madam.
Thank you all of you.
Thank you so much.
So
Thank you,
Thank
Shiva,
you,
once
sir.
again. Thank you, Shiva. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Participants, please have your feedback link. Please fill the feedback link. The certificates will be sent to your mail ID. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you so much.